disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So, continuing on the breakdown of the controversial banned TikTok bill, which we have heard every direction on why this bill is being passed. Everything from Chinese spying to endangering kids' mental health to apparently, TikTok stars are influencing the wrong things. Every which way to Sunday to explain why, out of all social media applications, why TikTok was primarily part of this targeted bill and why they made this bill so vague that they also included any other website of their choosing. And we broke down in previous video that all of this is just the means of another censorship tact. This is all coming back to the point that TikTok is an outsider application, and much to the degree of Facebook and YouTube and Google and Reddit and Instagram and in part ways Elon Musk's X, they're all ties to the establishment. They're tied to the surveillance state. They're tied to the propagandist market of the U.S. imperial empire. And TikTok was one of those unbiased outsider applications that a lot of people turn to for a different take outside the norms of traditional legacy media and now traditional legacy social media apps, we can now say. So that's primarily one of the reasons why TikTok is being targeted, is because people are looking for an outsider opinion. People turn to TikTok as a means of communicating outside establishing controlled, surveilled, and monitored, tracked, and surveilled social media. But there's also another take to this, because while we're talking about Chinese influence, which is absolutely hilarious that they're banning TikTok in the means of stopping Chinese influence, after all the years that they say about the Chinese Communist Party, propagandizing and banning and censoring information over there, the way we retaliate is to do the exact same thing that they're doing. I just find that hilarious. A lot of people don't see the obvious irony to this, that in order to stop the Chinese Communist Party, we have to be apparently exactly like them. But the real issue, the real big thing, and why they're choosing now, out of all years, out of all the time that TikTok has been active in the social media sphere, has to do a lot with Israel-Palestine. And it's kind of no coincidence that this would be part of the reason why they're introducing and fast-tracking a ban of TikTok nationwide, especially after hearing this little tidbit of information about leaked audio from the ADL chief executive, Jonathan Greenblatt, freaking out because global youth aren't buying Israel's propaganda anymore. ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, or as we like to refer to, the League of Verified Karens. Because the ADL has just become the kind of woke, Karen, finger-pointing, blame everything as anti-Semitic kind of group. They are like the blue-haired liberal collage of trying to pose as, protecting Jewish safety. But really it is actually against Judaism. Is actually a deterrent away from Judaism and protecting that to preach more of Zionism, which is all this whole organization has become. So now here's the head chief of that organization, the finger-pointing man that says everything you do is anti-Semitic unless you do it my way. Here's that guy openly stating that we need to ban TikTok because it's a major problem. We can't influence kids.
But I also want to point out that we have a major generational problem. All the polling I've seen, ADL's polling, ICC's polling, independent polling, suggests this is not a left-right gap, folks. The issue in the United States' support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Taglit, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this, like, fast.
I just can't believe this is coming out of a grown-ass man. Like, we really, really, really have problems here. Young people are just not accepting of genocide. I mean, gosh darn it. What is wrong with the young people today? First, they ruined the napkin industry. Now they're not okay with mass murder. It's almost like they're using the internet to look at the globe and see what's happening worldwide and taking that information and making accurate reports on it. It's almost like they're analyzing it through the lens of different people through social media and communicating to one another, and it's seeing what's actually happening on the front lines of this war. It's amazing marvel that we didn't have social media back in the day of the Iraq invasion and part of Afghanistan, because I think Twitter, Facebook came around like late 2005, 2006. I may be wrong on that. But can you imagine if we had this means of communication, the communication means that we have now, back when the kind of war on terror started? Can you imagine how difficult it would be to continue on 20 plus years of war on terror? I mean, they're trying to do that now with mass censorship. That's kind of the whole point of all this. But can you imagine if someone from Afghanistan who was at the front lines witnessing the carnage, seeing that, the United States came in, created the Mujahideen, created these terrorist groups so we can have a war on terror, because in order to have a war on terror, we have to manufacture the terror. Imagine if someone was able to report that on a mass level, a mass communication network, and people just saw in the open. But it's a major problem that young people are not siphoned in to the propaganda that they've heard probably for 20 years of their life. Wow. It's all you young people's fault. You're too different. Why can't you just go along with the flow? Your grandparents are hip. They're so hip that they're part of the Israeli propaganda machine. Why can't you be like them? Why do you have to be so technological and different? It's hard to understand. That's why we got to ban an entire nationwide ban of a social media application. Because that doesn't show exactly the true means of all this. And here's Times of Israel, an actual Israeli outlet publication, even admitting to this. They said major U.S. Jewish group backs bipartisan bill that could see TikTok being banned. Jewish Federations of North America says it supports the proposed law due to concerns of anti-Semitism proliferating on the platform. Social media is driving anti-Semitism. TikTok is the worst. And I can tell you for my personal, research, and, I use TikTok to promote the channel, and sometimes I do little videos here and there. I can tell you that there is not a single take in any time that I've seen or witnessed TikTok videos or going through that. There hasn't been a moment where it is actually outlined as viable anti-Semitism. Like 99.9% of it is just showing the reports that even your own publication is reporting. Times of Israel, the Haaretz newspaper, which is the biggest newspaper publication in Israel, is reporting about how Israel is creating doing war crimes against Gaza, against the Palestinians, killing young mothers and children, all across this land. It's just amazing that pointing these out, pointing out the huge plot holes in the propagandist machine to continue on the perpetual of war is deemed anti-Semitic. Just like how they said that pointing out the flaws of the Ukraine war makes you a traitor, makes you a Russian puppet. They still do that to this day. But now, because it's Israel and Palestine at the top of the list, now any mention of this, any critical analysis of this makes you anti-Semitic. Even if you don't mention a damn thing about Jewish people, it's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with the religion. Had nothing to do with that. It's the fact that this is a manufactured war, that the global war empire collaborated together to oppress people in Palestine, to go after them, to seize their territory, to create, as RFK Jr. points out, the aircraft carrier of Israel, to have a giant military base in the Middle East to control other nations. That's all this really is. All it really is. It's keeping the war machine alive as much as possible. So here's Greenblatt, the ADL chief executive officer, now on MSNBC, basically preaching the exact same thing out in the open. And watch how hilarious this goes.
But we need to talk about TikTok. TikTok, if you will, it is the 24/7 news channel of so many of our young people, and it's like Al Jazeera on steroids, amplifying and intensifying the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism with no repercussion. But we.
It is like the 24/7 news channel. It's like Al Jazeera on steroids. Yes, because, when you watch Al Jazeera, they definitely have news reports of, people sitting in their basement, holding up their phone and going, I saw this report on CNN and this is how kind of I feel. Because that's kind of how Al Jazeera does it, right? And you notice how the minute he mentions about how we need to look at this TikTok ban, Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough kind of like move in, be like, oh yeah, we got to talk about this. Because another point to mention about why they're doing this is because young people are absolutely getting away from traditional media like this because they see right through this. They see right through the legacy media propaganda. That's why they're turning more to podcasts. That's why they're turning more to YouTubers. That's why they're turning more to journalists that are on, X writing paragraphs than they do listening to this crap. Because this is 24-hour garbage. This is 24-hour regurgitated talking points from the CIA and the White House being blasted to you and make you think that's actual news. It's like Inception. It's just taking over your mind to think that this is some sort of newsworthy moment when literally all they're doing is spewing talking points, propagandized talking points. They're not out in the front lines. They're not reporting on this. There's not a single reporter out in Gaza that's actually seeing the witness and carnage. But there are people on TikTok that are showing you the carnage, and that's what makes them upset. That's what's making them so angry. That's the anti-Semitism. It's to show you what war really is. It's a catastrophe. It's a genocide. It's an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. That's what terrifies them. To realize that people may actually look at this and see for what it really is. And this is also why TikTok is the top priority of their list here, because someone did this graph here and it says US views on top opinionated Israel Hamas TikTok hashtags, number of views in the 7 days to December 22nd, 2023. So someone did a breakdown of the top hashtags regarding the Hamas, Israel, Palestine situation. And you notice that the top tier hashtags, the most popular used hashtags, are right here. Free Palestine with the heart emoji and the flag emoji. Free Gaza, free Palestine. So they are definitely losing touch. They're losing their propaganda spunk that may have manipulated your grandparents and other people that are still beholden to mainstream media because they don't have any alternatives. But to the benefit of young people, you do have options. You have viable options. You go onto the internet and you can watch vast majority of different networks from different opinions and hear different sides of the story. Your grandparents and older generations didn't have that benefit. They watched the news and they just believed the news because that was the news. Your 6 o'clock news program was the 6 o'clock news program. They didn't have the vast majority of options that we have right now that we're able to analyze, and we can, fact check them by looking at different examples. So this is obviously one of the big key critical moments, and none of this ever got mentioned in the mentions of this TikTok man. None of this ever got mentioned because the word got out that this is really just about keeping the war machine afloat. And when you have a social media platform that's showing you the catastrophe at war, young people are not going to be so cheerleading for continuation of manufactured war. And you might lose touch, and you might actually have more people that are more anti-war. And we gotta cultivate more people to be excited about war. So it just goes to show you, like, this is Free Palestine, 82.6 million mentions on TikTok, compared to I Stand With Israel with only 2 million. So that's one of the key things, and that's why he says it's a really, 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 really big problem. Because if we can't manipulate children, they're worried about China manipulating children, and here's Zionists in Israel complaining that they're not manipulating children. Hey, if we can't brainwash our population to get into line to our faction, then nobody else can. Like I said, this is such absurdity. And they're so worried, and they claim that this is all about, national security and China and how it's taking your data, which, again, another absurd points that if China really wanted your data, first of all, TikTok is banned in China. I want people to realize that TikTok is banned in China. So to think that the Chinese Communist Party is using this to steal people's data, there's kind of an obvious flaw when you don't have that application in your own country. The other thing to mention about this is that if the Chinese Communist Party really wanted to steal your information, they have very many options. There's 99.9 ways to take your information outside of TikTok. And a lot of those ways come from the intelligence community that already harvest your data. Because people may not be aware, but under the Patriot Act, the FBI can secretly conduct a physical search or wiretap on American citizens to obtain evidence of crime without providing plausible cause, as the Fourth Amendment explicitly requires. So I wanted to show that to remind people that the intelligence communities in America and the West are already cultivating your data. They already have your data on foot. And they're the masterminds that are selling it off to other countries. They're the ones that are truly the ones selling you out to China, selling you out to Israel, selling you out to Saudi Arabia. They already have your information at their hands. So if you're so worried about the Chinese Communist Party taking your bank information or seizing access to your personal data, well, guess what? No doubt they probably already have it. They already have it, whether you're on TikTok or not. So to say that this is some sort of national security threat, that we have an application where it's mostly just young people dancing and sharing opinions for a quick 5 seconds, is an absolute absurdity. And the real point to focus on this is just an extension of more censorship. This is a totalitarianism to the next level, because now you have the government overpowering the means of big tech companies, including TikTok, to take harvesting control over these corporations, to steal data, to monitor posts, and to decide what social media is allowed to be social on. This is a violation of all First Amendment, all free speech, and it's just absolutely crazy and craven. This is the fascist dictatorship that they claim that China is perpetrating onto people. At least the difference between the Chinese Communist Party and here in the West is that the Chinese Communist Party, the people in China, they know that they're being censored. They know that their government is censoring people. But yet you have people in the West that are so absolutely brain dead that they think they're cheerleading that this is such a great idea. Well, if we ban TikTok, it's going to be great because, young people are going to, spend hours looking at different videos, and that's just crazy. But it's okay if, Grandpapa spends multiple hours regurgitating stuff he heard on CNN and MSNBC uncritically. The big takeaway from all this. So I just wanted to show people the real, true intentions of this TikTok ban. Either way, it is absolutely terrible. Either way, when a government has authoritarian measures, has that credence to disband a phone application, a social media platform from existence, and then also write that bill to extend it to other platforms, that's how you know that this is a complete fascist takeover. That's how you know that your free speech is slowly dying away. That if they could do this to TikTok, if they could do this to other applications, there is no stopping. There is no stopping. And if you look at the bill, we covered this in the last video, but if you look at the bill, they wrote it so vaguely so that they can go through any application or any website and deem it as some sort of threat to national security and close it down. So it may not just be TikTok. It could be your favorite news publication. It could be a journalist. It could be anything. As long as they deem it a threat to national security, they could shut down any means of information because they want to control the narrative. In order to control the population, they have to control the narrative, and then they have to manipulate and fearmonger you so that you are so paranoid that you fall into the trap of their authoritarian measures. That is what is happening, folks, and that is dangerous to any means of society. Whether you like TikTok or not is regardless. It's just authoritarian, fascist takeover and an absolute takeover of platforms, means of communication, to control narratives, to control information, to not allow people to see the true intent, the true perspectives of things like war, things like Israel, Palestine, things like Ukraine and Russia, things like the messed up Congress, corruption, all these things that you can definitely see on TikTok, but they will never tell you on places like Facebook. And obviously, these social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, there's a reason why they won't tell you it.